Now, Marquez improving to 43-2-1. Folks, we are finally just about at the moment. All of the talk leading up to the fight, well, we're just about here. As a matter of fact, this past week leading up to the fight, the press conference leading up to tonight's middleweight championship fight held on Wednesday, and Bernard Hopkins shared a photo of his days as an inmate dated April 1985, pictured with his prison inmate trainer, Smokey Wilson, both saying a big night like tonight would indeed come to fruition. Hopkins would be like Marvin Hagler. At the weigh-in yesterday, De La Hoya, all business, focused. Hopkins, for his part, signaling that he would fulfill his role as the executioner. Oscar, contrary to his last fight, in remarkable shape, while Bernard is never out of shape. As a matter of fact, Hopkins sporting a waist that was 27.5 inches. And so, about 25 minutes from now, Oscar De La Hoya will be leaving his locker room and making his way to the ring. Hopkins versus De La Hoya, moments from now. And now a reminder, our next HBO pay-per-view telecast will be October 2nd when Felix Trinidad comes out of retirement to face Ricardo Mayorga.
Felix Trinidad is back, training with a vengeance, and he better be, because he picked one tough fight. Explosive, unpredictable, Ricardo Mayorga. Trinidad versus Mayorga, back with a vengeance, Saturday, October 2nd from Madison Square Garden, live on pay-per-view. Contact your pay-per-view provider to order. Is Trinidad ready for this?
Every so often the fight crosses over from boxing match to big event. Well, tonight's Hopkins De La Hoya bout seems to have done just that, an intriguing interest among fans everywhere. Folks, I am pleased to be joined right now, the man, light heavyweight champion, Antonio Tarver, fresh off of his knockout victory over Roy Jones Jr. Look, you've heard all the talk. You're familiar with what's going on now. The hand issue with Oscar De La Hoya, 11 stitches, and the wrap issue. What's your take on it?
My take is that it's a significant injury to De La Hoya on the eve of the biggest fight of his career, facing a guy that he was already coming in as an underdog. I think the stitches will bother him. It'll mentally take a toll on De La Hoya if he's not able to close that hand and deliver the striking blow that he needs to cut Hopkins in half.
So you think it will adversely affect him?
Definitely, because he's consciously thinking about it already. I heard that back in the dressing room, he didn't want the wrap or the tape to cross over the stitches. So already, I think it's taking a mental toll on Oscar De La Hoya.
That being the case, prior to this, many folks were wondering, especially how serious a fighter Bernard Hopkins is. Why would Oscar De La Hoya take this fight? Why Bernard Hopkins?
One reason only. De La Hoya is in touch with his legacy. De La Hoya wants to go down in history as one of the greatest fighters ever to lace up the pair of gloves. So he's taken on the biggest challenge that was out there for him, and I commend him for that. Only great champions take risks like this.
You know, interestingly, several weeks ago, many folks had Bernard as a prohibitive favorite. But in the last couple of weeks, there's been a groundswell of support for Oscar De La Hoya. Any inkling why?
Of course. It just goes to show that Oscar De La Hoya has die-hard fans. They don't bet with their mind, they bet with their heart. They love their fighter, Oscar De La Hoya.
Now, what about the speed issue? Will the speed be a difference here? Especially given that Bernard Hopkins has indicated that he will force the pace. So that means switching from how he normally fights, because in 9 of Bernard Hopkins' last fights, they have gone 10 rounds or more. So he's going to have to pick up the pace. Can he do that?
Yes, he can. But Hopkins is a seasoned veteran. That's why you saw stilt Hopkins. He slimmed down because he's felt all along that he would have to chase De La Hoya all night long in order to slow him down and hopefully end this match in a knockout.
Real quickly, what's next for you, especially given that Bernard Hopkins says if he's victorious, he wants Roy Jones Jr. I thought you wanted him.
I don't understand how Hopkins can want Roy Jones Jr. Why settle for second best when you can have the best?
All right, folks, there you have it from Antonio Tarver. All right, folks, let's head back downstairs once again to our anchor, Jim Lampley.
Wow, Antonio Tarver, light heavyweight champion of the world and one of the greatest talkers our sport has ever seen. Well, we're less than 20 minutes now to the moment at which both Oscar De La Hoya and Bernard Hopkins are going to be leaving their dressing rooms and walking to the ring. They do have one extremely noteworthy common opponent. So it makes sense to examine what Hopkins and De La Hoya did in comparison to each other against Felix Trinidad. Of course, the Trinidad fight became a majority loss, which was one of the most controversial fights of Oscar De La Hoya's entire career. On the other hand, Bernard Hopkins' greatest victory by far, September 29, 2001, when he dominated Felix Trinidad en route to finally scoring a technical knockout of Trinidad in the 12th round of that fight. Let's take a look at some footage from both of those fights, starting with De La Hoya against Trinidad, September 18, 1999. At this moment in their careers, Larry Merchant, both were unbeaten fighters, and this was a fight of enormous magnitude.
This was the biggest fight in terms of small men for a very, very long time. Set the record for pay-per-view, 1,400,000 people. And for the first half of the fight, Oscar De La Hoya surprisingly gave a boxing lesson to Trinidad.
You're looking at footage from the early rounds in which De La Hoya moved, stopped, created firefights with Trinidad, won most of the firefights, and seemed to build a big lead in the fight. Then Emanuel Steward, as the second half of the fight arrived, Oscar De La Hoya, for whatever reason, began to back off, and Felix Trinidad unloaded his power shots, ultimately resulting in a decision for Trinidad.
I watched along with Lennox Lewis and Nassim Hamed, and after the fight, we all decided that Oscar had won the fight, but we hated to see him get the decision by running away, and evidently the judges felt the same way.
Now here is Hopkins against Trinidad, and many have said that Bernard Hopkins used to beat Felix Trinidad an enhanced version of the very plan that Oscar De La Hoya had constructed and used in the first half of his fight.
The blueprint that De La Hoya did showed Hopkins that Trinidad, a great power puncher, had flaws against movement.
Here's the 12th round, in which you'll see Hopkins landing the perfect right hand that put Trinidad on his seat. Ultimately, Felix was able to get up before the count of 10, but his father, Felix Trinidad Sr., came to rescue him and saw to it that he took no more punishment, regardless of what decision referee Steve Smoger might have made. And Bernard Hopkins celebrated his victory at that point. An interesting statistic, punch stat comparison. Hopkins Trinidad. Bernard Hopkins against Felix Trinidad averaged 54 thrown punches per round and landed 22. Oscar De La Hoya versus Felix Trinidad averaged 54 thrown punches per round and landed 22. What ultimately, Larry Merchant, do we take away from a comparison in these two fighters' efforts against Felix Trinidad?
Well, Oscar fell in love with the idea of outwitting the champion at the time, Trinidad. And so he thought he had the fight won and danced away and danced out of the decision late in the fight. Actually, he probably threw more punches per round if you account for the fact that he threw so few late in the fight. Hopkins took a different tack. We had never seen that Bernard Hopkins. He fought a masterpiece, a virtually perfect fight, and that told us that we were dealing not with just somebody who had put together a nice winning streak against ordinary opponents in the middleweight division, but that he was a very special middleweight.
The layman might say, Emanuel Steward, well, Bernard Hopkins knocked out Felix Trinidad, and De La Hoya certainly wasn't going to knock him out the way he fought the second half of the fight, so obviously Hopkins wins. But there's more to it than that.
There's a lot more to that, and speed is a big element in this fight. Not only Oscar De La Hoya's hand speed and foot speed, but the speed at which Bernard Hopkins applies his pressure. If he applies pressure with a good speed and intensity early in the fight, it's going to drain Oscar a lot faster. But Oscar still has those fast hands, and in the early part of the fight, I can see the crowd really getting into Oscar, and Oscar getting off to a good start. But I expect, as the fight goes on, Bernard to surprise us with a solid jab, which he says he learned a lot from Felix Trinidad landing so many jabs at Oscar's face.
What Oscar must do tonight to have a chance to beat Hopkins Is it somewhat identical to what he was able to do in the first 6 rounds against Trinidad?
No, I think for Oscar to beat Bernard, he has to fight almost a perfect tactical fight. He cannot make too many mistakes. He has to utilize his speed, his trickery, combinations, but the most important thing is he cannot move too much too fast. He's got to pace himself. And I think that Bernard could fight a fight that wouldn't be completely perfect and still could get by with a victory.
One more standard for comparison, and one which is perhaps discomforting, maybe even embarrassing for De La Hoya, would be how the two fighters looked in their last assignments before coming here tonight. That, of course, was the doubleheader, which was constructed for here on June 5, a showcase for Hopkins in his 3rd fight against Robert Allen. Prior to this, he had a win and a no contest against Allen. And in this fight on June 5, Hopkins more or less took a conservative route toward an easy decision, simply waiting for a chance to impose his will on Allen and ultimately knocking him down with that straight right hand. But it was a fight in which many felt Allen didn't do enough to try to threaten Bernard Hopkins, and Allen allowed Hopkins to fight at the measured pace which Bernard prefers, a pace which allows him to turn up the heat in the late rounds, as you see him doing here. Hopkins knew Allen well. He knew Allen's style well enough to understand what was coming. It was not a crowd-pleasing fight. There were no giant cheers from the audience, just another easy Bernard Hopkins win. Then, young Felix Sturm, relatively unknown, came into the ring against Oscar De La Hoya and basically said, "Welcome to the middleweight division." De La Hoya spent the first 2 rounds firing everything but the kitchen sink and seemingly, Larry Merchant, trying to knock Sturm out before the competitive issue could become more difficult.
He underestimated Sturm, who was undefeated but hadn't fought any known fighters, and maybe blew some of his conditioning, such as it was in the early rounds, and still stayed in there, and Sturm jabbed him all night long, but never followed up with it. And that gave the officials a chance to call some very close rounds for De La Hoya.
De La Hoya, under pressure, needed to come up with a big performance in rounds 11 and 12 to win the fight. He did enough to convince all 3 judges to give him those rounds and ultimately to give him a 115-113 decision over Sturm. But en route to that unanimous decision, there were, Emmanuel Stewart, some very discomforting returns for De La Hoya. He had difficulty stopping Sturm's jab. He got hit from time to time with Sturm's left hook. His face showed the effects of the beating Sturm had given him, and he did not appear able to hurt the younger fighter at any time in the fight.
And that brings us to the point that Oscar De La Hoya, for the most part, has still got to be considered as nothing but a good welterweight and junior middleweight at the best. But give him credit for stepping up to fight a guy like Bernard Hopkins, who's a full-fledged middleweight.
So as you see here, a comparison for both Hopkins and Allen of the activity rate on June 5, as opposed to their activity rates in their prior bouts. Hopkins, who had thrown 69 punches per round last December against William Joppi, threw only 36 per round against Robert Allen. De La Hoya landed only 16 of 66 in every round against Sturm, after against Fernando Vargas in September of 2002, having landed 26 out of 60. We've got about 12 to 15 minutes remaining until we expect the 2 fighters to be leaving their dressing rooms and walking to the ring. The source of the delay here was the discussion that took place in Oscar De La Hoya's dressing room about the tape wrapping of his hands and exactly by what method they would be wrapped. Ultimately, that was resolved between Mark Ratner, the executive director of the Nevada State Athletic Commission, and De La Hoya and his people. And with the clock having been set back just a little bit to accommodate that, we're bearing down on the time at which these 2 fighters will be coming out. And you can see that Hopkins is warming up now in his dressing room, trying to achieve that fine sheen of sweat that shows that a fighter is ready to come into the ring. Let's go back upstairs to James Brown.
All right, Jim, as anticipation continues to build for what is, in fact, billed as a special fight. You know, it is not too often that a fight becomes so big that it crosses over from boxing match to big event. Well, tonight's Hopkins De La Hoya bout seems to have done just that, with, I guess you could call it, intrigue and interest. from fans everywhere. Tonight, a seemingly invincible middleweight champion in Bernard Hopkins, looking for big fights and bigger paydays, goes up against one of the richest, most titled and celebrated fighters in boxing history. The lives and careers of Bernard Hopkins and Oscar De La Hoya couldn't be more different. Bernard Hopkins and Oscar De La Hoya shouldn't be fighting.
And there's a lot of people who are against me because they just feel that I have no chance whatsoever.
Why would De La Hoya be getting into a guy like Bernard Hopkins?
Why De La Hoya is fighting tonight for a title in a 6th weight class may lie in a promise he made to himself as a 20-year-old.
The goals that I have of becoming world champion in different weight classes and making history, hopefully. I mean, that's gonna take many, many years. I'm not gonna give up on that. Even though if I'm gonna get all that fame and money, it's not gonna change.
At the same age, in a far different life circumstance, inmate Bernard Hopkins was even less likely to be here tonight. But he made a promise to himself as well.
I got tired of being locked up. People hollering when the lights are out. People crying. People getting raped. People getting extorted. Anything that come after that can't be as bad as that situation.
Both have accomplished much in the past decade.
This kid is like a debutante with a knife in her purse.
Absolutely astonishing performance.
But in different ways, both will be defined by their performances tonight. De La Hoya is the richest non-heavyweight in boxing history, in part because he's consistently fought top opposition.
Courage, composure, dedication, class.
But he's also known for fading at the end of fights.
Jane Mosley is out hustling Oscar De La Hoya, out fighting him when it matters most.
In the next hour, De La Hoya can silence the critics who question his toughness. He can prove so much because the risk is so great.
Bernard Hopkins has put himself up there in the list of all the great middleweights.
Though out of the spotlight since upsetting Felix Trinidad, Hopkins' record streak of middleweight title defenses makes him arguably boxing's pound-for-pound best.
18 people came, and 18 people have failed. And Oscar De La Hoya will be 19.
From very different paths, they meet here tonight. Oscar De La Hoya seeking to prove his toughness against one of boxing's roughest fighters. Bernard Hopkins seeking the riches that have eluded him against boxing's premier drawing card.
He's always wanted to be in my position, and I've always wanted to be in his position.
You want American inspiration?
This fight is for respect.
I am the American dream.
This fight is for history.
He's going to try to steal the rounds.
This fight is for everything.
My job is to knock him flat out.
This fight is to prove myself that I can do it.
Well, folks, it's time for our main event. Undisputed middleweight champion Bernard Hopkins against Oscar De La Hoya. Bernard is making his record 19th title defense and hasn't lost in 11 years. Oscar is trying to join Sugar Ray Leonard as the only fighters to win titles in 5 different weight divisions. Hopkins versus De La Hoya is being brought to you by MGM Grand, the city of entertainment in Las Vegas. Brewery Fresh Budweiser, the undisputed, undefeated king of beers. This Bud's for you. And HBO Pay-Per-View, the best in pay-per-view entertainment, brought to you by HBO. Stars from across the galaxy are here. NBA legend Magic Johnson is here. A big boxing fan indeed he is. Vincent Pastore, you know him well from The Sopranos. Big boxing fan as well. And Billy Crystal, perhaps the most versatile performer in Hollywood. We know he loved Muhammad Ali. He's here to watch this one as well. Senator John McCain, a boxer himself back in his days, keenly interested to make certain boxing is regulated well. He's here to watch this one, as Charles Barkley is. Charles will claim to be a fighter, but he's not a good one. But he's here to watch it nonetheless. And Mike Tyson, still trying to keep his boxing career alive. We'll see if he's able to do that tonight, watching two excellent ones at it. Marco Antonio Barrera, you've already heard Jim Lampley indicate on November 27th, there will be a third chapter in a bout with Eric Morales. Breathtakingly violent is the way to describe it, and that man as well, the hitman, Thomas Hearns from the famed Kronk Gym in Detroit, Emmanuel Stewart's Mecca. And LeBron James, the outstanding youngster in the NBA who is simply scintillating on the basketball court. They're all here to watch it tonight, as well as Nicole Kidman. That's right, movie stars as well, all here to watch what we hope will be an outstanding match between that man there, Bernard Hopkins, who is in marvelous shape. Not talking now, as Jim Lampley was teasing earlier, but he can do it. Bernard Hopkins may own the middleweight record, but his place in boxing history is far from set. Lose tonight, and it will be harder to place Bernard with the likes of Sugar Ray Robinson, Carlos Monzon, and Marvin Hagler, middleweight champions who faced and beat the best. As for Oscar De La Hoya, the risk seems more physical than emotional, but Oscar has faced the best in the ring time and time again. Well, check it out. He'll be facing the best tonight there in Bernard Hopkins. As we welcome you back upstairs to the host desk, yours truly, James Brown, alongside of the man who is now the undisputed junior middleweight champion, Winky Wright. Thank you so very much for joining us. Partner, you are a talented, dangerous southpaw who many people stayed away from, but Shane Mosley took that battle and you came out victorious. Let's talk about this bout tonight. We've heard so much about the hand of Oscar De La Hoya. You're a boxer. Give us your take on it. Will it be a problem for him?
Well, I think it'll be a problem because if you have a cut inside your hand, when you try to make a fist, it's going to be sore. So I think it'll bother Oscar for a while, but after a while, he'll get over the pain and do what he had to do.
Now, mentally, that's got to throw him off stride just a bit because he goes in, again, in the fight of his life against a guy who is extremely dangerous. Can he regain that focus and forget about the hand once he's in there?
Well, he's going to have to because, like you said, he's in front of Bernard Hopkins, a truly dangerous fighter, rugged fighter. Oscar got to fight one of the best fights of his career tonight.
Talk about Bernard Hopkins. What kind of fight do you expect to see? And again, on a stage that Oscar De La Hoya is very accustomed to, big fights, some 17, if you want to call it that way, big fights indeed. Will that have an adverse effect on Bernard Hopkins, this big a fight?
Well, I don't think so, because Bernard been in big fights. It just hasn't been a mega fight like a De La Hoya fight. You know, he's a champion, 18 defenses, so he used to being in the limelight, used to being in front of a lot of people, so that shouldn't bother him. I'm looking for him to come out here and throw a lot of punches, try to rough De La Hoya up and beat De La Hoya in the inside, bang his body a little bit, and, you know, try to win the fight like that.
Now, you talk about roughing De La Hoya up. So much has been made about the nutritional program that Oscar De La Hoya has been on through training camp. Dietary engineering, he talks about, from a lady out of Orlando, Florida, Sari Melman. Can, in fact, that serve a positive purpose for him to be in such great shape that he can change and control the pace of the fight, that it will throw Bernard Hopkins off?
Yeah, because Bernard could be expecting him to run out of gas like he usually do in the later rounds. So by having these new people in his training camp, maybe he can work harder and at a longer pace and a longer time for the whole 12 rounds of the fight.
Now, Bernard confidently has teased with us when we ask, how would you fight yourself? How would Bernard Hopkins fight himself? He says, I wouldn't fight myself at all, indeed. But if you were in the ring with him, as crazy as it sounds, what would you do against Bernard Hopkins?
Well, you know, you got to take away Bernard's strengths. He's a strong, rugged fighter who like to do whatever it takes to win. I would try to keep him off balance, use my jab effective, you know, box and stick and move him, make him chase me where he off balance, where his punches can't have no power. But if Oscar give him time to set and punch, then it's going to be a long night for Oscar because he's going to feel the power of a 160-pound fighter.
In your mind, who wins this fight tonight and why?
In my mind, I'm going to have to go with Bernard Hopkins because I just think he's too big for Oscar De La Hoya. But Oscar could outbox him. If this new nutritionist thing he on works, Oscar could box circles around him. But if it don't, Oscar will be in for a long 12-round night tonight.
If it works for him, I'm going on that program as well. Hey, success to you. November 20th, your rematch with Sugar Shane Mosley.
Yeah, November the 20th, come and see the rematch. It's going to be the same thing. You know, it's a business. Shane a good guy, but I'm the man, undisputed.
All right. Winky right. We'll find out who's going to be the man in this bout coming up between Bernard Hopkins and Oscar De La Hoya. Let's head downstairs once again to our anchor, that is Jim Lampley. Hey, Jim.
All right, thank you very much, JB. And incidentally, before we get started breaking down the fight one more time, I can tell you, James, that celebrity package you voiced over was solid. It was full of some big names, and it barely skimmed the surface. Looking around the arena, this is as gloriously celebrity decorated a crowd as we've seen in the sport in several years. Emmanuel Stewart, one last time. It's been said by a lot of people, Oscar De La Hoya will have to fight a perfect fight to win tonight. What, under these circumstances, would the perfect fight look like?
The perfect fight would be a lot of fitting, sidestepping, combinations very fast, and to take advantage of the habit that Bernard Hopkins has of moving forward with his left shoulder pushing at you and bending to his right, which means Oscar should step off to the right a lot real quickly on the side of Bernard to keep Bernard off balance.
All right, that's the fight that Hopkins probably expects that De La Hoya is going to try to fight against him. Larry Merchant. Bernard put together his own version of the perfect fight September 29, 2001 in his TKO victory over Felix Trinidad. Can he, in this setting and under these circumstances, reproduce such an effort?
We don't know. He had the middleweight championship on ice virtually for 3 years, fighting 4 guys who weren't competitive, including one who spent most of the night hiding behind the referee. But a lot of people have gotten old waiting for Bernard Hopkins to get old. He calls himself a genetic freak, like Bobby Bonds or Clemens or some of the great old athletes of today who don't perform like old athletes. They're inspired by the mega bucks you can make today, by the modern training techniques to keep going on. They seem to be able to stop the clock or even turn the clock back. What Bernard Hopkins also does is manage the clock in the ring. The old Khan is a bit of a con artist in there. He doesn't want to work all the time. Oscar De La Hoya has to punch that time clock.
All right, and one final comment from here. It is central to boxing's appeal that this product has scarcity. One of the reasons you buy a pay-per-view for Oscar De La Hoya versus Bernard Hopkins is the sense that Oscar De La Hoya and Bernard Hopkins might fight each other only once. This is a fight a lot of people never expected to see made, and even after it was made, a lot of ring experts never expected to see it actually come off. So that sense of scarcity is perhaps more heightened than ever as we get ready for Hopkins and De La Hoya. Tail of the tape for this much anticipated battle at the 160-pound weight limit. Bernard Hopkins is 39, 8 years older than Oscar De La Hoya, who isn't particularly young himself at 31. A 2.5-inch height advantage for Hopkins, one of the big reasons he's favored in the bout. On the other hand, De La Hoya measures longer in arm length from the armpit to the end of the fist by an inch. Hopkins weighed in well under the 160-pound limit at 156. Very proud of his 27.5-inch waist. De La Hoya weighed in at 155 and told us if he had to make 147 for this fight, he probably could have done so.
Hopkins' weight is a puzzlement to many people because he hasn't been that low for a very, very long time, maybe only once before in his career. Some people think it's because he feels that he's going to have to chase De La Hoya and want to be at his lightest. My guess more is it's one of the mind games he plays with opponents and himself, that he wanted to show that he's not just bigger than De La Hoya, but better than De La Hoya, and weighing almost the same thing.
Unofficially tonight, Hopkins weighs 169 pounds. De La Hoya did not allow us to put him on our unofficial HBO scale. Rules of the bout with our unofficial ringside scorer, Harold Letterman.
The Bernard Hopkins-Oscar De La Hoya fight is scheduled for 12 rounds using the unified rules of the Association of Boxing Commissions. There is no 3 knockdown rule. Only the referee can stop the fight. In case a cut is caused by an accidental headbutt, we go to the scorecards after 4 rounds have been completed, and you cannot be saved by the bell at any round, including the 12th and final round. Jim.
Oscar De La Hoya will enter the ring first. A rare experience for him, though not unprecedented. You see there his record in 17 different title fights. Just now preparing to emerge to a place within sight of the crowd in the arena. Notable wins for De La Hoya. The TKO of Vargas, a dramatic performance. The win over Whitaker disputed by many. His two dominant performances over a faded Julio Cesar Chavez were difficult for some Mexican fans to swallow. And of course, the noteworthy losses to Trinidad and Shane Mosley, two of those three losses subjects of controversial scoring and disputed by some. My way. Bernard Hopkins choosing tonight not to wear his characteristic executioner's mask because he feels as though in context of ongoing events in the Middle East, it would not have been tasteful for him to wear it.
He has sure come here the hard way. It's made him unpopular. It's made him tiresome sometimes. But without his hard way, he wouldn't be here.
Now Hopkins pausing momentarily at ringside before choosing to go up the steps and into the ring. Noteworthy fights for Hopkins, who has 18 consecutive successful title defenses in the middleweight division. The huge win over Trinidad in September of 2001. 2 wins and a no contest with Robert Allen, one of his tougher opponents. And he lost the last time 11 years ago in May of 1993 in a fight against Roy Jones in Washington, D.C. At that time, Hopkins was relatively callow and inexperienced compared to his vast storehouse of ring knowledge now. He says, if I ever fought Jones again, I wouldn't be as far away from him as I was in that fight. Let's go to ring announcer Michael Buffer now for the official introductions.
Ladies and gentlemen, from the MGM Grand of Las Vegas, Bob Arum and Top Rank Incorporated, along with Golden Boy Promotions, is proud to present the main event of the evening. 12 rounds of boxing for the undisputed middleweight championship of the world. Brought to you in association with HBO Pay-Per-View, the MGM Grand, and your king of beers, Budweiser. Sanctioned by the Nevada State Athletic Commission Chairman John Bailey, Executive Director Mark Ratner, Commissioners Dr. Tony Alabo, Skip Avancino, Joe W. Brown, and Dr. Flip Homansky. Physicians at ringside, Dr. James Game, Dr. Al Capana, Dr. Jeff Davidson, and Dr. David Watson. Timekeepers at the bell and counting for the knockdown seconds are Al Bisick and Steve Esposito. WBA President Gilberto Mendoza, WBC President Jose Suleiman, WBO President Francisco Barcarcel. At ringside, the 3 judges scoring this contest on the 10-point system: Keith McDonald, Dave Moretti, and Paul Smith. And when the bell rings, the man in charge of the action inside the ring, your referee, Kenny Bayless. And now, ladies and gentlemen, this is the moment the world has been waiting for the thousands in attendance and the millions watching around the world. Let's get ready to rumble! Introducing first, fighting out of the red corner, wearing black with white, his official weight, 155 pounds. Since he captured Olympic gold in 1992, his professional record now stands at 37 victories, including 29 knockouts, with only 3 defeats. He has won 8 world title belts in 6 weight divisions. But this bout tonight is not about past victories and belts. Tonight, it's all about a personal legacy that will never fade. Ladies and gentlemen, from East LA, the former lightweight, former junior lightweight, former super lightweight, 2-time welterweight, former super welterweight and reigning WBO middleweight world champion, the Golden Boy, Oscar De La Hoya. And his opponent across the ring, fighting out of the blue corner, wearing brown and officially weighing 156 pounds. His professional record stands at 44 victories, including 31 knockouts, with only 2 defeats, 1 draw, and 1 no contest. For the last 11 years, he is undefeated in 24 bouts. He has been the middleweight champion for almost a decade. Tonight, he makes a record-breaking 19th consecutive title defense. His credentials for the Boxing Hall of Fame are established tonight. He wants to pad the resume. Ladies and gentlemen, he's the fighting pride of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, the universally recognized, reigning, defending, undisputed middleweight champion of the world, and now the executioner, Hopkins.
Clear it up. Alex, you're here. Everybody else up.
Okay, gentlemen. Okay, gentlemen. Trunks are high here. Any punch thrown in this area will be considered a clean punch. Trunks are okay here. Now, guys, we went over the rules in the dressing room. I want you to keep the fight clean, protect yourself, and what I say you must obey. Good luck to both of you. Touch up.
This fight has been appropriately compared to Leonard Hagler. Can it live up to that fight?
I think it has a very good possibility of living up to that fight.
Perhaps because of the height disparity, Oscar De La Hoya never made eye contact with Bernard Hopkins as they met at the center of the ring. Hopkins tried to search for eye contact with De La Hoya. It didn't happen. Now they face off at the center of the ring, and we'll see how well Oscar can use his left hand.
Oscar never makes eye contact with his opponents before fights.
So then he followed the pattern. First contact, a little left hook for Hopkins around the De La Hoya guard. Bernard Hopkins usually fights the first several rounds at a measured pace. He promised here he would start fast to try to put some pressure on De La Hoya and put some rounds in the bank. De La Hoya himself promised a fast pace as well. So, of course, they're staring at each other and tactically waiting things out at the beginning.
What's interesting here, Oscar's not moving in boxing. He's doing something that I don't think anyone expected. He's being aggressive for the most part, which I think is very smart. Saving his energy and making Bernard start anticipating and worrying about what he's going to do to Bernard.
Crowd is chanting, Oscar, Oscar, Oscar.
And the little we could see so far, Oscar has been beating Hopkins to the punch.
Well, that's one of the supposed advantages for De La Hoya is potentially faster hands. Hopkins with a chopping right hand along the neck of Oscar De La Hoya.
Well, outside of that one flurry that Oscar's shown, I haven't saw him do too much of anything.
Hopkins is trying to lure De La Hoya into taking the lead, and De La Hoya is.
And after all the talk about a fast pace, it only stands to reason that the first couple of minutes would be tactical. And now Hopkins begins to try to put a little bit more leather on De La Hoya and make the fight begin. De La Hoya missing with his first left hook. Did get in a little body shot with the right hand. Left jab lands for De La Hoya. Flush on Hopkins' face.
Hopkins appears to be more tentative.
Yes, he is.
De La Hoya.
De La Hoya has changed his strategy, much to the surprise of everyone here. And that one left jab may have won the round for Oscar.
Didn't take much.
Looking for jabs, looking for jabs, looking for jabs. That's what I want to see you do, is jab more. The pressure's already there, so just jab, right? Jab for me, everything's cool.
Okay, look. Again, he ain't doing nothing. His left hand began to drop, get ready to drop too now. You can start laying your right hand over the top. Okay? Keep your jab, keep going. He ain't doing shit, man. You gonna beat this son of a bitch, you know what I'm telling you?
Right here, you see Oscar landed a jab over Hopkins' right hand, and that was just enough to win the round. It was the only clean blow that landed in the entire round.
CompuBox numbers in one. Both fighters threw 25 punches. Hopkins landing 5, De La Hoya 3. But, as Emmanuel pointed out, that one solid left jab from De La Hoya was by far the most demonstratively clean punch of the round. And if Hopkins promised a fast pace, maybe he didn't mean it, or maybe it's just difficult for the Leopard to change his spots at age 39.
Well, I don't think he expected Oscar to be moving at him. He expected Oscar to be running away. And when Oscar's coming at it and actually doing little tricky movements and is seeming to be in such a high alert position, has got Bernard really tentative about being aggressive himself now.
So has Oscar already given Bernard something unusual to think about simply by standing in front of him and inviting him to fight?
Absolutely. I think, and not only just Bernard, the entire audience, none of us expected this.
Hopkins got in a little right hand inside. De La Hoya also with a little pop. Neither man has really connected on a power punch yet.
It's almost like this computer-style Olympic boxing right now. It's who can get a computer point. No one is really taking any risk at all at this stage right now.
Hopkins missing over the top with his right hand.
That's right, jab with him. Jab first. Look at that.
They both miss with the jab.
Pump it up, right into his shoulder. Pump the jab right into his shoulder. I promise you. Pump the jab right into his shoulder. Watch what happens.
Floyd Mayweather Sr. is the loudest voice at ringside, saying pump your jab right into his shoulder. Pump your jab right into his shoulder. Apparently Mayweather Sr. wants De La Hoya to hit Hopkins on the left arm and the left shoulder.
At this stage, any hit he can get anywhere is quite possible to win a round, because it's one of these rounds is going to be the one person who lands one clean blow will probably win this round again.
Well, Hopkins just popped De La Hoya on the ear with a left hook. That may give him the lead in this round.
Hopkins normally fights these patient-type fights. Oscar's the one who usually comes out much faster, whether he's going aggressive or really going backwards. But this is a little different for Oscar to be fighting the pace that he's fighting.
And now Hopkins' corner has asked Bernard to throw more jabs. But Hopkins not yet responding to that entreaty. Right hand for Bernard Hopkins. And there's a hard right hand over the top by Hopkins. De La Hoya hasn't done much down the stretch of this round, and now he lands a straight right hand. And now De La Hoya flurrying, lands another little left hook upstairs, and another left hand.
This is what I was speaking of, those flurries which Oscar can throw. Even if they don't land clean, he can win a round.
And the crowd responds a la Leonard Hagler 17 years ago.
Good. Good. Keep fighting at the pace. Keep fighting it. Keep fighting at your own pace, okay? You're doing good. Keep fighting at your own pace. Hey, you can stop his jab, pick his jab and stick him sometimes. Because he's taller and you can get in, okay?
Counter over the top. What's that? When you jab, he hypnotizes. He looks at it. Remember? Okay. Remember, then he'll try to jab with you and you can fire over the top like Boy said. But your jab make him hypnotize. He don't work until you stop it.
Once again, you see Oscar landing a punch, and even though I don't think it was that much of a devastating punch, it was enough to still win the round. Bernard was going to wait, but it was compared to nothing, it won the round.
De La Hoya with that last flurry in the last 20 seconds of the round may well have stolen it, in which case he could be up 2 rounds to love on at least some of the scorecards.
Hopkins said he wouldn't make the same mistake that Hagler did in allowing Leonard to win the early rounds, thinking he'd retire late. Hopkins is now trying to outbox the boxer, which is the mistake that Hagler made.
And from what I can gather, and I may be wrong, don't seem as if Oscar's punching with really super power, but he's still landing blows. I think Bernard should step it up and try to be a little bit more physical at this stage right now. Otherwise,
but Bernard Hopkins has been known to wrestle, to punch low when necessary. He's been seen as a guy who flirts with the rules in a lot of ways. So far, there's been little of that here, although moments ago he grabbed Oscar De La Hoya in close, and maybe we're going to see some of the roughhouse tactics, which have sometimes emerged in Hopkins' career.
Well, if he continues to fight this comfortable fight, he'll just let his championship slide away.
Right hand over the top for Hopkins. The crowd oohs and ahs. De La Hoya tries to retaliate as referee Kenny Bayless breaks him apart.
The sneak right hand has been the most effective punch for Hopkins. His jab is just not really very effective.
De La Hoya with a left hook to the body after Hopkins missed over the top with the right hand. And here we go. Hopkins begins bullying De La Hoya into the ropes. Crowd responds immediately.
How Bayless handles that sort of tactic could well determine the outcome of this fight.
Body punches for De La Hoya. Bayless tells De La Hoya to keep him up, but the contact was there. De La Hoya blocking Hopkins' jab with his gloves. Not sure Bernard has done enough in the first 2 minutes of this round to ensure himself of winning round 3. He might want to try to put something in the bank in these last 50 seconds. There's a right hand, but that'll help.
But he's got to do more than that because no one is landing nothing clean. And when you have a guy with fast hands, he creates more excitement with the crowd and with the judges.
Hopkins misses again. De La Hoya gets a chance to land a little counter left hook.
There is no impression in this fight that Hopkins is the bigger, stronger man that he is supposed to be.
He's not imposing himself that way. He's not making it a physical fight. He's in there playing a war of nerves for the moment against Oscar De La Hoya. And De La Hoya, with his faster hands, is scoring more.
Even if the punches don't land that clean, he still is going to get the credit for it because they look better.
He's throwing more. He's throwing at the right times. He may not be landing much, but Oscar De La Hoya is fighting the fight that he wants more than Hopkins is right now.
Absolutely, and he may have 3 rounds in the bank.
Man's an old man. He's an old man right now, man. He's looking the worst I ever seen it. Man, look here. When you got him in the corner, he ain't doing shit, man. Break with the left hook, right hand. You know how to do that. Break with him. I guarantee you're gonna land it.
It's coming now. Get that shot to the shoulder.
Take a couple deepers for me, baby. Take a couple deepers for me. Deep again. You all right? Okay. Now you want to counter the jab, baby. Counter the jab and go with the loop.
Hopkins' punches, even though they may not create as much excitement as Oscar's, have much more damage and perfection. But the thing is, he's not throwing enough of them. He's throwing a punch and then running into a clinch at the same time.
You heard Floyd Mayweather Sr. say he looks like an old man. He looks like an old man compared to De La Hoya's quickness with his hands. That may be the story of the fight.
Well, how old is he getting? Is he down 30 to 27 on Harold Letterman's card? Harold, how do you have it so far?
What's your neck fight? 29 to 28, 2 rounds to 1. Oscar De La Hoya. Without question, I thought Oscar won the first 2 rounds with that jab. Bernard looked like he wasn't sharp at all, not snapping out any jabs like he did against Trinidad. On the other hand, in round 3, somehow or another, he came alive, landed a real good, solid right hand that I thought did more damage. 2 to 1, De La Hoya.
Hopkins' left hook partially blocked by De La Hoya's glove. De La Hoya didn't get a chance to counter. Bernard was out of there. Hard right hand down the pipe, lands for Hopkins on De La Hoya's face. His best punch of the fight so far.
Yeah, but I can see Bernard has a lot more authority on his punches. Oscar, even when he does punches, he's throwing that pop, pop, pop punch, and he's not really loading up on the punches.
And now Hopkins begins to go to the body. I wondered when he'd begin starting to get to De La Hoya's rib cage. He's a good body puncher and has been throughout his career.
Hopkins is definitely picking up the pace. Not that much, but he's picking it up just enough where it's starting to give him a little edge in the scoring, I believe.
De La Hoya, in order to make big impact, may have to hope that Hopkins walks into something. But he gets in 3 good body shots there. And blocks Hopkins' upstairs stuff with his gloves. Now Hopkins gets 1 left hand through the guard. Left hook landed for Hopkins. De La Hoya with a body shot. Hopkins came back upstairs, left and a right. They trade punches at center ring. De La Hoya landing twice below the belt. Kenny Bayless didn't see it.
But I think this is what Hopkins needs to do. Keep burying in, pushing him with his left shoulder. Even if Oscar's throwing punches, still pushing with his left shoulder and being very physical. And he'll drain a lot of Oscar's strength.
Bernard may still be somewhat surprised by Oscar De La Hoya's willingness to step forward and seeming willingness to trade with him.
I definitely believe that he's surprised.
Is continually beating Hopkins to the punch with the jab. Hopkins' most effective punches have been a sneak right hand. His jab has virtually done nothing so far.
Oscar De La Hoya told us 1 week ago in our live interview from Puerto Rico, he said, I'm not going to be running. I'm going to stand in there and fight with Bernard. Hopkins said, don't believe it. So far, believe it.
Not only fighting him, for the most part, he's been equally as aggressive as Hopkins has been.
A fascinating first 4 rounds.
All right, baby. All right. Get a little closer to that jab, son. Get a little closer to that jab, baby. Give me a mouthpiece. You're getting a little closer with the jab. No, back here. What's up? Yeah, you went there. Oh, you hit up here.
Bayless, you've been getting close to the body. You've been getting inside close. Let them punches go where I told you, all right?
Smart, man. You're fucking great fucking shape. Gotta control this guy with your jab, Oscar. You're way low on jab. Pick him up.
In those exchanges down there, it's very difficult a lot of time for the referee to see what's going on. But in this case, sure, he should have saw that because it was 2 low blows. And he was in a good position to see the blows.
De La Hoya did unto Hopkins what we expected Hopkins to do unto De La Hoya.
Through the first 4 rounds, Bernard Hopkins averaging 30 punches thrown per round. De La Hoya not much higher at 38 punches thrown per round. Both men relatively cautious, relatively self-protective, trying to figure out what kind of a fight it's going to be, trying to not to make a big mistake early.
I think one of the mistakes that has been made is definitely the fact that Hopkins' corner is not telling him that the score, what they think the score is, not just saying throw another jab, baby, you're doing this, you're doing that. You should tell him that the fight is close or that you're losing the fight and you're going to have to do something and get a little bit more excited about what you're doing.
Good combination by De La Hoya, and then he got out of the way. 1 punch was blocked, but 2 landed. Now Hopkins holds him and hits him inside, and De La Hoya tries to get back at him with 1 left-hand punch to the body before they break apart. And 2 good De La Hoya left hooks digging into Hopkins' ribcage as Bernard jumped in. Bernard Hopkins has closed the distance now between himself and Oscar De La Hoya. And De La Hoya isn't backing up. He's standing in, ready to fight. Emmanuel, is De La Hoya gambling that Bernard Hopkins is going to get old overnight?
I just think that he's gambling that his hand speed is much better than than Bernard had expected. And I don't think that Hopkins just is prepared for this type of fight that Oscar's fighting.
Now a grinning Hopkins begins to seem to warm to the task as he throws his jab much more frequently. Hopping De La Hoya with the jab. He landed a little right hand a moment ago.
And you know, as I look at this fight, if Hopkins would just step it up a little bit, I see him winning this fight very easy if he would step it up a little bit. Because I think his physical strength, and I don't think Oscar has that much power in his punches.
What about Hopkins' length, his height, and his long arms?
Yes, all of that, but he's not using them enough.
Maybe it's because Oscar isn't letting him do it.
Well, I thought that in the beginning. I think he's gotten a little comfortable right there, but I think he's just fighting too much of a... Well, he's fighting his regular fight. I should take that back. He normally fights these tactical fights like this.
Bernard Hopkins is patient. He's low risk. He cares only about winning the fight, not about pleasing the crowd.
But what I'm wondering is, given the expectations of the fight, that Hopkins was going to be able to dominate De La Hoya with his size, that De La Hoya is staying in there unexpectedly. How will that influence scoring in close rounds?
Larry, I think that may be a big decided advantage for De La Hoya, because not that he's landing so much, but it's so much more than what everybody expected. And as a result, the judges may have a tendency to start giving him rounds, early rounds that he may not even win sometimes.
And this goes back to the parallel between this fight and Hagler-Leonard. Ray Leonard understood the psychology of scoring better than did Hagler in that fight.
And that was Hopkins' best round simply because he was busier. And his physical strength is just so much more.
Take the flurry away. Take the flurry away, but drops of rain. Drops of rain. It doesn't come one at a time. It comes to drops of rain. Drops of rain. All right, you got to go back off that counter jab and don't worry where it's going. You know where it's going. Let the shot go. Let it go. Don't worry about it.
Move your head, keep your jab busy, man. His legs is bad, man. Back him up with your jab. And if he's just sitting there right there posing, break on with the left hook right hand, okay? It's easy. Easy. Keep using your jab. I keep telling you, this one's gonna win you the fight. Keep using it like a key.
The look on De La Hoya's face suggests that he doesn't think it's all that easy. Hopkins threw 49 punches in the 5th round. by far his high for the fight. He has started, as Emmanuel Stewart pointed out, to warm to the task as we reach round 6 of a scheduled 12.
And you may see his left jab become more of an important factor as the fight progresses on. It may be the most important punch between all of the punches that both guys may throw, because Oscar seems to lay in a lot and seems to be vulnerable to be hit with jabs, particularly in the forehead area.
De La Hoya trying to seize the initiative now early in round 6. Gets in a body shot, short with the right hand, but it's been De La Hoya who's made contact early here.
We should mention here, after that flurry by Oscar, we see no signs that his lacerated hand is bothering him.
Yeah, I'll be very honest with you. I find it very difficult for someone to get a cut inside the left hand, having been a trainer all these years, and have 11 stitches. I mean, it just, to me, can't happen.
I was told that the cut actually could have been closed with 4 or 5 stitches. 11 was, in effect, precautionary, making certain that it wouldn't open during the fight. And incidentally, it's inside the left hand, on the palm, between the second and third fingers, near the knuckles.
One thing is certain so far. The mismatch that many people expected has not materialized.
Not yet, but Hopkins is beginning to make it rougher, and De La Hoya is stepping up to fight with him, and there's going to be more contact as these rounds progress.
See, now Hopkins is taking the lead, something he doesn't prefer to do, but he has to go after Oscar.
And he's doing it, I think, very effectively. Slowly, he's becoming more of an aggressive, physical fighter.
Floyd Mayweather Sr. keeps asking Oscar De La Hoya to throw a left hook and come back with a right hand. De La Hoya hasn't yet been able to marshal that particular combination exactly the way Mayweather wants it. Hopkins is doing what he's doing, largely one punch at a time here, though he had combinations in the last round.
But you see, Hopkins is becoming very comfortable with himself now and with the way the fight is moving.
Bouncing on his feet, throwing more freely. De La Hoya got in the right hand there.
De La Hoya is missing most of his punches. They're fast, they're coming off not that much power, and not really making that much contact. Hopkins is a little bit better defensive than maybe we're giving him credit for.
Oh, I think he's a great defender, and always has been a great defender.
But he's becoming more and more physical, more and more aggressive as the fight progresses. And even punches that he may not land solid, you can see him actually physically moving Oscar around the ring.
Chasing Oscar. De La Hoya managed to make a miss on all 3 of those. Hopkins gets in a right hand. De La Hoya with a little left, and the round comes to a close.
I want your hands up a little better, okay? You smart, man. I'll smart him. Just let him come on and try to crush you. You back him up with your jab, up and down, down and up. When he crowds you, let your hands go. You feeling me?
All right. Winning the fight. Pick it up, pick it up. They got to pick it up a little bit here. More with the jab, son. And don't wait for him. You got to put the pressure there and keep it there for this round. Make him fight this round. Make him fight. Don't let him get away. Back him up. Make him fight.
Well, that's it, nothing.
He laying outside trying to steal something, son.
We heard someone in Hopkins' corner saying he's winning the fight. And then you heard his trainer, Bowie Fischer, said, you got to back him up.
Power punches in round 6. Bernard Hopkins, 10 out of 20, his highest totals for the fight. De La Hoya only 5 out of 18. Hopkins gradually building momentum in the fight and making more contact. De La Hoya seemed to win the psychological war early. The physical war is tilting toward Bernard Hopkins. Their CompuBox numbers are virtually even after they were even in CompuBox numbers against their one comparative opponent, Trinidad. Harold Letterman, how do you have it through 6?
Okay, Jim. 3 rounds to 3. 57-57. I got it even also. And attention, I thought that Oscar De La Hoya did steal round 6. Rounds 3, 4, and 5, like you guys have been saying, Bernard picked up the momentum. He was getting off the harder shots. Oscar was right in front of him to be hit. But in the 6th round, De La Hoya came along and stole it. Bernard was missing. 3-3, got it even.
I have De La Hoya winning the fight 4 rounds to 1 with 1 even.
There's a hard right hand by Hopkins, flush on De La Hoya's face after De La Hoya had landed a couple good shots of his own. Bernard by far the harder puncher when they're in close.
And if you notice, after all these exchanges now, Bernard, by bending his shoulder forward, is catching Oscar a lot with little punches as Oscar is pulling back, because Oscar's going straight back under the force of the weight of Bernard, and he's catching with those little tail-end shots after those exchanges.
For the first time in this round, Bernard Hopkins is beginning to physically punish Oscar De La Hoya, particularly in close quarters. But De La Hoya not backing off. Crowd trying to encourage their man. Hopkins lands the left hook. He was short with both right hands. De La Hoya lands a left hook.
That's the execution. Take it to the yard, take it to the yard. Take his commissary.
Bernard's one of those old school fighters who fights with his left chin close down to his chest, which means it's very, very difficult to hurt him with a punch. It's good chin because of the way it keeps his head tilted all the time.
He strafed De La Hoya with the right hand. Oscar was able to come back and rip Hopkins with a little left hook. The harder punches by the middleweight, Bernard Hopkins.
I mean, Bernard's hand speed and reflexes is amazing. To me, it's equaling Oscar. Plus, he has more power.
This round kind of hangs in the balance. Both men have done some stuff in the round.
Well, I give it, that's just Hopkins round.
And now Hopkins lands 2 jabs solidly. At the end of the day, probably Bernard Hopkins' round.
That's the professional I know.
I need my jab to be stronger, son. I need my jab to be stronger. My jab is not strong enough for me. All right?
Okay.
I need my jab to be stronger than what it is.
Give me a clean break when I ask for a break.
Bellas, you got to see out the cup for me, baby. Thank you, thank you.
Oh, you hit
Hey, coming up.
Round.
8th round. It's already the 8th round.
Man, this is history, man. You better let this motherfucker go. Box, man. Use your jab.
All you gotta do is box. Here. Box your ass off. What do you feel? Here. Just walk to your right. I'll stay away from his right hand.
Both fighters landed some power punches in the 7th round. Bernard Hopkins by CompuBox count 11 out of 24. Oscar De La Hoya 7 out of 15. We go to round 8. The tactical battle, which we saw early, has abated, and a fight has materialized in the past 3 rounds.
I saw Hagler Leonard. This is not Hagler Leonard.
Not nearly as much activity. Hopkins backing De La Hoya up with a solid left hook.
And even when De La Hoya punches, I don't think he's affecting Hopkins that much. The punching power difference is amazing. Even though the weight may not have been that much, but the punching power and physical strength is tremendous.
Bernard Hopkins, an amazing physical specimen. 27.5-inch waist. 169 pounds as he comes into the ring tonight. Left hook, the back of De La Hoya's ear. Straight right hand down the middle. Oscar finding it harder and harder to block or duck Bernard Hopkins' shots. Hopkins has achieved that look of menace, which has typified so much of the last several years of his career.
I wish he would be more menacing, not just look menacing. It seems, Emmanuel, he's giving De La Hoya too much respect.
He's definitely giving De La Hoya too much respect. But this is just Bernard. He fights this take, but he's slowly, each round, taking more control of the fight still.
De La Hoya popped Hopkins with a jab. Pops him again with a jab. So Hopkins uses his left glove to bang De La Hoya's head around 3 or 4 times.
Well, that's what he said was going to be an effective puncher, I believe, was the jab, because he saw Stern hit him, so effective with the jab in the late rounds.
He hasn't been as effective with the jab as Stern was yet, but he's starting to throw it more often. De La Hoya reaching with a right hand over the top and missing.
Well, his ring generalship is better now. He's going underneath punches, pulling back, doing a lot of things that it's amazing for him, to consider that Oscar, I thought, would be the better coordinated guy.
Bernard Hopkins is starting to be frighteningly accurate with his right cross and his left hook. He's hitting Oscar De La Hoya with virtually every power punch now.
And you notice at the tail end of the punch out, he actually physically moves Oscar's entire body around, particularly with the left hook. Even if Oscar blocks it, it moves Oscar. It's completely off balance.
Hard right hand over the top for Hopkins. De La Hoya was moving away, and De La Hoya is beginning to move away with greater frequency. It'll make it harder for Hopkins to land power top. Good left hook for De La Hoya to punctuate the round. He stepped in, found an opening, and popped Bernard with a perfect left hook shot.
But that was his only punch up the entire round, but it could be enough to give him the round. See if the judge wants to look at it, because it was the last thing that landed, but Bernard won the round.
It stays right there by the tree. Roll out and come right back. Roll out and come right back. All right? Keep the pressure on him. The jab is going to do the job. The jab's going to get the job done.
It's my round.
All right?
It's my round.
Counter with the jab, baby.
It's my round.
All right. Counter with the jab. You got.
Shoot some high jabs down there, or shoot a straight right hand, or good liver shot. All right? Keep your jab a little bit more busy, okay? That's what's keeping you ahead of the game right now. Keep your jab busy.
Seemingly, Bernard is trying to find out what the score is, and he's saying my round is my round, and his corner's ignoring it. They should let him know that he may be an edge, but it's very close.
Why is Oscar De La Hoya putting his arms up over Floyd Mayweather Sr.'s shoulders?
I have no idea. I never saw this in my entire
I've never seen it either.
Nope.
It's as though he's trying to stretch throughout the fight.
I think it's much more of a strain on the person's body to be going through all of those physical exchanges. You should just let him rest.
De La Hoya with a good left hook inside. De La Hoya's face is beginning to show the damage from Hopkins's withering power punching display in the last couple of rounds.
But Oscar's ready to fight back, though. He may realize that maybe he's being overpowered, but he's not going to go down easy. Good right hand lead by Hopkins.
And De La Hoya got in a little left, but with not nearly as much power as Hopkins's right hand lead.
Come here, come here.
And De La Hoya is saying, hey, don't bang my head.
Guys. Keep it clean. Keep it clean.
Now, Hopkins is fighting his regular Hopkins fight, which he's very good. He throws right hand leads a lot and then finishes up instead of coming back with a hook, bumping you with his body.
That's right. It's like a 1-2-3. Yes. Right hand, left hook, and then boom, the shoulder or the hip bangs into you.
Yeah, well, he does a lot of work with his body. And once again, notice where Hopkins keeps his chin always tucked in his chest.
De La Hoya trying to shoot the jab and score as Hopkins came at him. Hopkins grabbing De La Hoya with the left and banging him hard with the right. De La Hoya with another good left hook to the body.
And see, he's using his left shoulder.
De La Hoya on a body punch by Hopkins.
He didn't even see the punch.
He doesn't look like he's going to get up,
Hopkins
guys.
is pushing him in, digging the left hook.
First time he's been knocked down in 5.5 years, and he's not going to make it up. It's a Bernard Hopkins knockout of Oscar De La Hoya in the 9th round. And I think it was a left hand to the body.
It looked like a left hook to the body.
He didn't see it, and no one else hardly saw it.
Well, if you saw Arturo Gatti knock out Leonard Doreen several weeks ago in Atlantic City, it was the same thing.
Same result. Different angle.
Left hook to the body, and this one seemed to catch De La Hoya right under the rib cage, where it simply takes your breath away.
And if this was any other sport, we'd say timeout. Some other player go in. You can come and sit down, Oscar. But in boxing, that's it. It's over with.
Oscar De La Hoya has never previously been knocked out, and he didn't expect it to happen tonight.
You can see the frustration as he pounds the canvas. He's never gone down like that. Previously, Ike Corte knocked him down with a big punch in their fight.
But in all fairness to Bernard, he was getting closer and closer and closer as the fight was progressing to scoring a knockout anyway, whether it was been a body punch or a head punch.
Crowd isn't quite certain to what to make of this so far. Some of them probably hoping that referee Kenny Bayless will say, no, that wasn't a knockout. Keep fighting, but indeed it's over. And let's take another look.
Oh, good body shot.
That was the shot.
But it didn't seem like it was enough. It was more back on the back part of the rib cage and not so much in the volume earlier. It seemed like it shouldn't, well, who knows.
Delayed reaction. De La Hoya clearly still reacting to that left hook to the body, and then he took a little shot on the head, but
no, the body
unquestionably shot. It was the body shot that finished Oscar De La Hoya in the fight.
That he didn't see.
Well, I've said it many times, Emmanuel Stewart. If I can have one weapon to take into my next life, a good left hook to the body is the one I want. I think it wins you more than anything else.
Well, the effective thing about those hooks and the one that Gaddy won was they didn't see the body punch. And as you see, Bernard is just being very physical at this stage right now.
An extremely frustrated Oscar De La Hoya, who lay on the canvas in a prone position and pounded his fist in frustration. The Mickey Ward liver shot wins it for Bernard Hopkins. Let's go to Michael Buffer for the official particulars on Hopkins' knockout victory.
Ladies and gentlemen, referee Kenny Bayless counts to 10. The bout comes to a halt at 1 minute, 38 seconds of round number 9. The winner by knockout victory, and still the universally recognized, undisputed middleweight champion of the world, the pride of Philadelphia, Bernard, the Executioner Hopkins.
Well, Emmanuel, you made the point for the past several rounds that Hopkins' shots were more powerful than De La Hoya's and that his power was building.
Well, also, I was very impressed with the fact that Hopkins had such good defense and good coordination. I mean, Oscar was actually having a problem of hitting Hopkins. And he fought a perfect fight the last part, putting pressure on, doing a variety of things, hook to the chin, hook to the body, jabs, right hand leads. Just too much for Oscar to deal with.
Incidentally, you talk about being festooned with belts. This is the first fight in history in which all 4 governing body belts plus the Ring Magazine belt were all at stake here tonight. So Hopkins has retained 5 belts in this fight. He's the first fighter to retain all 5 belts in the same fight. And here are the CompuBox numbers. Hopkins 99 out of 361, De La Hoya 82 out of 315, but Hopkins' punches were harder. Power punches, Hopkins landing 17 more, and the margin was growing with each passing round. They both threw about the same number. Hopkins with the highest connect percentage. At the end of the day, only one punch mattered, the left hook under the rib cage. Let's go to Larry Merchant with Bernard Hopkins.
Thank you very much, Jim. Congratulations, Bernard. It looked like you got into a boxing contest the first 3 or 4 rounds. What were you seeing? What were you doing?
First, I'd like to thank Doug, New Edition magazine, Magnum, but all my sponsors. Larry, to answer your questions, I wanted to show everybody that I can box, and that at 3 or 4 years ago, you even mentioned that I'm willing to go down to 54 and box, but not now. But I came light, and it was a big talk, and you heard about the talk about me weighing 156. What did I do wrong? My trainer walked up the plan, Bowie Fisher, and said, we're going to fool him. We're going to come in a little above the junior middleweight so you can be faster, you can be lighter, and you still have your power. We know ourselves, Larry, and that's why I was boxing earlier to figure Oscar out, to show that I can outbox him, Larry. And I think I did. I don't know if you agree, but I think I did.
Well, I disagree. I had Oscar winning most of the first of the early rounds, and it seemed that what was happening, at least to my eyes, was exactly what you said, that Hagler made a mistake in doing against Leonard. Did you sense that and turn it up? Because you were asking in your corner, am I winning these rounds?
Yes, I felt the urgency. And Larry, I told my trainer and cutman Leon Tabbs, is that around the 8th or 9th round, I said, am I winning this fight? And Bowie said, keep it up, push the jab in there. And I knew it was urgency, and Larry, I moved out on it. I'm glad you heard that. Yeah,
so you weren't sure you were winning?
No, hell no, I wasn't sure, because I know Oscar was boxing a good boxing game until I had discovery.
What about him surprised you?
His movement and him coming out to fight me straight up. I mean, Larry, he didn't run. I give him a lot of credit. He didn't run. He didn't, you know, try to look for a gift from the bodies of the boxing world as far as the judges. And he came to box. I mean, it surprised me, Larry, but it didn't surprise me where I didn't have plan B, C, D, and E. I mean, I did have plan B, and you see it kicked in.
You turned it up in the second half of the fight. What did you see? Did you see something? Was he slowing down, or was it just you going harder?
I think it was just me going harder. I didn't see him slowing down. Matter of fact, I didn't see him take a break in the whole fight. I was trying to get inside and sort of like rough him up and put my weight on him to push him back to work on his legs, but he was a little crafty little son of a gun. He was slipping and moving and holding, and when he was holding me, he was holding me like with a death hug, and he didn't let go until the referee came in. So he smart fight up until then.
All right, now let's take a look at what happened at the end of the fight with the knockdown and knockout on a body punch. You describe it.
I'm setting him up with the jab. I believe I threw a jab, and then I leaned to the left and hit him right under the liver. That's one of the great body shots. Yeah, that was, and that right there, I heard like a wind come out, and then I went up with a little left hook. That hook wasn't too much damage, but the left hook was the one that really made him say, I heard the wind come out of him.
It was sort of chopped liver.
It was a chopped liver with a little bit of sauce on it, the Hopkins sauce. Larry, I'm good to be back on pay-per-view. I'd like to thank everybody. Ross Greenberg, everybody.
How satisfying is this
Bob
for
Arum,
you?
Not Don King.
In what happens, you talked about beating Trinidad. Now you've beaten De La Hoya. How satisfying is that for you?
At 39, almost 40 in January, I won 20 defenses. I'm one away. Whoever's that unlucky number 20. That is satisfaction. That is satisfactory to me and what I've done, Larry. I told my mother before she passed that I won't fight past 40. And you know what? I think if I do, I ain't a superstitious guy, but I believe once I go back on my word, I always pay a big price. And I'm looking to do big fights on pay-per-view or HBO. Bring on all of them. Bring on all of them.
All right. Roy Jones has said now that he's been knocked out by a light heavyweight. He's willing to come down in weight. Is it more possible that you two could get together in your next fight?
If HBO, Ross Greenberg, and Mark Tafferter, which I know they can put it together, I would fight Roy in the drop of a dime and come back and do my last defense as a middleweight. Yes, Larry. If not, Roy Jones, bring on Tarver.
Thank you very much, and congratulations again, Bernard.
All right. Thanks, Larry. Thanks,
all right.
Oscar.
Here's Oscar De La Hoya.
Great champion.
Good champion.
All right, Oscar. You tell us what your thoughts were going into the fight. You surprised him by standing in front of him and trading punches and even beating him to the punch. What was your plan? What did you see? What happened?
Well, when I saw I can stay in front of him, you know, my whole game plan, our game plan just changed, and just move alertly and watch for that right hand, and it was working, and he threw a good body shot. He caught me. What can I say?
He stepped up the pressure in the last couple of rounds. You didn't turn down or at all. Could you feel him having urgency that perhaps he might have be behind on the cards, although I've learned that he was ahead on 2 of the 3 cards?
No, he was behind on 2 of the 3 cards, and we were actually, I was ahead on 1 of the cards, and we were tied on 2 of the cards. You know, he's a middleweight champion of the world. What can I say? I try to do the impossible on paper, and that's beat a middleweight champion coming up from 130. So I'm proud of my performance. I feel sad.
You fought a lot of great fighters. Have you ever been hit with a punch like that? Was it a punch unlike anything you ever felt before because he was bigger, or did it just happen to hit you in a vulnerable spot?
He got me right on the button, and it doesn't matter how soft it is or how hard it is. When it's right on the button, I tried, believe me, I tried getting up. I couldn't do it. I couldn't, and believe me, I have what it takes to get up, and he caught me right on the button.
Do you have any regrets at making this attempt at trying to climb this mountain?
No, I'm very proud of what I tried to accomplish. I knew I could have won. I could have won this fight. I know I could have, and he's a great champion. I give him all the respect in the world. He's a great middleweight champion, and like I said, I tried to do the impossible, and it just didn't come out.
The cut on your left hand, did it affect you at all? Could you feel it during the fight?
No. perfectly fine. I was popping him with jabs and even caught him with left hooks and left uppercuts. So I felt fine. Everything was perfect. Just that he caught me with the right punch. That's it.
Would you want to take another look at it?
Oh, of course.
Okay, we'll run that punch back again because Oscar's only been really hurt one time in his career that I can recall by Ike Corte. Never a devastating punch like this.
Oh, he's caught me. What can I say? I mean, I've been hit by that type of shot before where it makes you make a noise like that. But when I tried getting up, I couldn't breathe, and those shots were just right on the button, and he did a great job, and I give him all the respect in the world.
Do you see any reason off of this fight to retire or to continue your career?
Larry, I was very surprised. I made it an easy fight for me. I didn't expect it to be so easy against a true middleweight like Bernard Hopkins, the best middleweight in the world. I love boxing, that's all I can say.
So that sounds like you wouldn't mind finding the winner of Mayorga and Trinidad, or perhaps Mosley again, or right down the road.
Well, I have no game plan whatsoever, and I haven't thought about it. I was so focused on this fight. I was such in the zone of beating this guy. Great shot, great left hook, all the credit in the world. May the best man win of Trinidad and Mayorga.
Thank you very much,
Thank you,
Oscar. Jim?
All right, well, Oscar De La Hoya was either given false information or he didn't properly interpret the information he was given regarding the scorecards. Here's the overall truth. De La Hoya, after 9 rounds, was leading on Judge Keith McDonald's scorecard, 77-75. However, he was already behind 79-73 on the judge, veteran Dave Moretti's scorecard, and he was behind 78-74 on the card of Paul Smith, meaning that the fight was getting away from him on the cards of 2 judges, and Hopkins was headed toward what appeared to be at least a split decision victory. Maybe even the 3rd judge would have gotten in line in the remaining 4 rounds if Hopkins had continued to roll forward the way he was at that point. At the end of the day, the cards are moot, as it is a 9th round body shot knockout by Bernard Hopkins. Larry Merchant, your closing thoughts.
Well, Bernard Hopkins said that Oscar De La Hoya would be in the water with the big shark this time. And the big shark just sort of swam around him for a while and let him toy with him and get toyed with until he decided to go and land a big bite. And that was just the end of the fight. And I just think we just have to credit that to Hopkins being a bigger guy. I think he wanted to prove tonight that he was not just bigger, but that he was better. I don't think he proved that, but I do think he was the bigger and the better fighter between a big guy and a guy moving up who was essentially a welterweight.
Whether he's talking, which he does a lot, or he's fighting, Bernard Hopkins takes his time. He's in no hurry, but eventually he gets to the point. James Brown.
Jim Lampley, thank you so much as I turn to Emmanuel Stewart. And while it may not have lived up to what Leonard and Hagler was some 17 years ago, again, give both fighters credit. They tried to execute tactically what they thought would work, and in the end, the bigger man did in fact win.
Right, James. I think the biggest fact was that it was still a middleweight with a welterweight, junior middleweight, or whatever, and then a good middleweight. And he used his strength and also had better coordination than we expected. But Bernard fought a good fight. Oscar fought a good fight. But one important factor, I think, was Oscar did not have punching power, and that's a big factor. He did not get the respect of Bernard. And as the rounds went on, Bernard became more aggressive, because he had no respect for Oscar's punching power.
That punching power notwithstanding, or lack thereof on Oscar's part, were you surprised that Oscar tactically stood right in front of him, trying to take advantage of what he saw were weaknesses?
Well, I was not surprised. The biggest thing was that Bernard was just tentative in the beginning. If Bernard had picked up the pace in the beginning like he did the last few rounds, the fight wouldn't have went this far. Whether it was a body punch or whatever, Bernard was going to win the fight, I felt, by knockout, because he was doing so many things at the end and becoming more and more effective. And it seemed like he was able to even mentally function a lot better as the fight was timed, where Oscar was going into a slump for the most part.
Well, just a few moments ago, we followed Oscar De La Hoya back to his locker room. Again, Oscar was very, very focused, thinking that he could win the fight. And you see, he's still frustrated. He talks about that shot to the liver, and as he indicated,